Going live.
Live.
All right, we're live. Welcome back. This is Old New Dude with co-host
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
We appreciate you stepping back in on this channel. If you've watched any before this, you know what to expect. Richard's got anything that he wants to say, we'll go ahead and just jump in.
Let's do it.
And then I'll jump in with my stupid stuff here and there.
They found her, my lord. Ned rose quickly. Our men or Lannisters? It was Jory, his steward Van Poole replied. She's not been harmed. So it sounds like Van Poole believes that Ned believes that Arya would be harmed by the Queen's men.
Yes.
Find Sansa and bring her to the audience chamber. Her voice may be needed. So almost certainly Ned has already talked to Sansa about this, and so he does know the truth already.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure she didn't go, it happened too quickly, I don't know, in front of Ned.
I don't remember. It happened so quickly I didn't see. She directly contradicts herself.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get to that direct contradiction here in a second. But
no problem.
He descended the tower steps in a red rage. He had led searches himself for the first 3 days and had scarcely slept an hour since Arya had disappeared. This morning he had been so heartsick and weary he could scarcely stand, but now his fury was on him, filling him with strength. So I feel like there's a parallel here with Catelyn, and maybe it implies that his second daughter is his favorite, just as Catelyn's second son is her favorite.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jon has a special place in his heart, but he's not allowed to show that love too much because it threatens his entire family, right?
Well, we get a sense of it at the beginning of the book that it struck Ned completely out of the blue. Like, why is Jon calling me Lord Stark? So I mean, there's definitely a bond there, but I understand he can't treat Jon better than he does his other children.
Right.
But have you watched the David Lightbringers talking about the Wolfman and the extra strength and all that stuff that Jon does here and there through the book?
Yeah, berserker stuff, right?
Right. And this the strength filling him with that rage right there, even though he hasn't slept in days, he couldn't eat, I think is a nod or a hint to the Stark bloodline and that ability.
Yeah, and you know, of course, Dany's dragon dreams give her a similar strength and so forth, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sir Raymond lived under the king's peace, but his family had fought beneath Rhaegar's dragon banners at the Trident, and his 3 older brothers had died there. A truth neither Robert nor Sir Raymond had forgotten. Right? So it sounds like there's obvious animosity, right?
Oh yeah.
And this is Derry, and I think it's worth noting in the story later on, Derry is going to be given to Lancel because the only claim is through a bastard.
Right.
Right, it's just a bastard claim is no claim at all. Anyway,
well, you got to stop thinking about it too, man. Before we go on, Derry helped the 2 Targaryen children go across the narrow sea, and might have some inclination of. He was also a witness to the pact down in Dorne. So House Derry knows, in my mind, probably knows a little bit more of what's going on behind the scenes, and the man sitting there looking at Robert going, yeah, your time is coming.
Yeah, and there's actually a couple different Derrys in the story, right? There's I mean, back in the day, right? There's Sir Willem Derry is the one of the was it 5 loyal men or whatever, however many loyal men it was 4 loyal men, 4 other loyal men. I can't remember the term that, but anyway, the loyal men that went with Viserys and Dany, right? But then you also, of course, have the Kingsguard, and sometimes people confuse. In fact, some people are very consistently confusing Jonathan Derry with the White Bull. John Derry is the one that's outside the bedrooms. It's acknowledging that, yes, we do have a vow to protect the queen, but not from the king.
He also tells Jaime to stop whining and do his job.
Right. Whereas the White Bull is the one who says you're not to judge the king when he strangles Brandon and burns Rickard.
Yeah.
So those are two different things, and I've often heard people either get them backwards or give them both to the white bull, and so I think it's sometimes worth remembering the correct.
Yeah, so Dairies definitely have a in this story so far, they definitely have a really close tie or connection to House Targaryen, without a doubt.
Right. Too crowded, he thought. Left alone, he and Robert might have been able to settle the matter amicably. So Ned understands both the politics and relationships, right? He realizes that with this crowd, the king's going to have to act differently, and so because he understands politics, and this isn't the only time he understands politics. So we've talked about already that he's really had a better read in the politics most of the time than Catelyn and so forth.
Yeah, he's already got an edge of the situation in front of him. He knows what's going to happen. Just like when he has to put on his Lord face at Winterfell, the king's going to have to put on his king face. And he's not looking forward to that.
She was shaking. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." We always get shaking when fear is involved, and this is a society in which attacking royalty is usually death.
Yeah.
It was hard to see how she had caused so much trouble. Like I said, I'd say this was an interesting take, but it actually isn't, right? Royalty is threatening a commoner is not even considered wrong, and striking royalty is death. So it's so even though we were like, well, she didn't cause trouble. Well, in this society, she did, right? Based on their and I certainly agree with our norms more than their norms. I'm just saying that you can understand where Ned's coming from, where he says, she had caused so much trouble.
Definitely.
"Hungry some. I ate some berries, but there was nothing else." So we're already seeing Arya's resourcefulness here, right? Which is obviously going to become a real thing as she's traveling around the Riverlands and so forth.
Well, it's extremely funny. The upbringing of these two girls armed them for the path that they take.
Yeah.
Sansa with her courtesies is what's arming her,
right?
And Arya with her resourcefulness, her quickness, just her overall toughness is the only thing that's getting her through.
Yeah, the previous chapter, Sansa is so good at the courtesies, right? And that's what she's been trained on. But it's one of the few times where you really admire her before Ned's death, and after Ned's death. There's lots of reasons to admire her. The fact that she considers killing Joffrey and taking herself with him and so forth. I mean, she's a completely different person once Ned's dead, right?
Right.
But here she's still the Sansa that many in the fandom don't like, but she's still really impressive in the previous chapter. Not so much in this chapter, but in the previous chapter.
Right. There was one thing right before that when. Ned called out to her. When she saw him, she cried out and began to sob. Now, that sentence, "began to sob," is it hinting that she hadn't cried before that? Was she standing there in front of the king and queen and the prince, all stink-eyed, like Arya is tend to do from time to time?
Yeah, she probably wasn't emotional until
her dad. Then all the emotion came forward. Was she standing there with her brave face?
I think so.
But she's a tough little kid.
"Why was I not told that my daughter had been found?" Ned demanded, his voice ringing. "Why was she not brought to me at once?" So Ned knows to use his authority to protect his own.
Yes.
You often hear people say that Ned doesn't know how to use his authority to help himself and his family and so forth, and I think he does.
Yeah.
"Ned, I never meant to frighten the girl. It seemed best to bring her here and get the business done with quickly." "And what business is that?" Ned put ice in his voice. Ice is coldness, but of course it's also the sword and the north.
Right.
And later his voice will also sound like a sword. So I think that's really a huge part of what George is going for there.
Yeah. Halfway through that paragraph, after he tells her they're going to feed her soon enough, he says, his eyes swept the room, searching for friendly faces, but for his own men, there were few enough. Sir Ryman Derry guarded his look well. Guarded his look well, does that mean that Ned can't figure out what he's thinking, or he's looking like he knows what's really going on here, and Ned can tell it, but he doesn't think anybody else will be able to notice how Derry is reacting to the situation.
Yeah, Derry obviously doesn't like Robert, and so seeing some animosity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get here into a minute here with the Renly, but another witness there that's highborn is Derry, and he doesn't like the Baratheons. But we'll get into the what people think about the situation here in a second. So go ahead.
So when Joffrey spoke up, Ned noticed that he did not so much as glance at Arya as he spoke. "Liar!" Arya yelled. "Shut up!" the prince yelled back. I just put pretty telling, right? I mean, people who are lying just want you to shut up. They don't want you to be called out on it, and it's pretty obvious that he's lying, right?
Yeah, you got a 13-year-old boy to a 9-year-old girl. Just say all he's saying is "shut up." I mean, it's just the whole image of this situation is laughable. But go ahead, keep going.
Speaking of laughable,
yes.
Perchance later you'll tell me how a 9-year-old girl the size of a wet rat managed to disarm you with a broom handle and throw your sword in the river. As the door swung shut behind him, Ned heard him say, "Lion's tooth," and guffaw once more. So Renly is jovial, but he is telling the whole world how clear it is who's lying in a way that's designed not to offend. Right? It's a brilliant political move toward justice. Right?
Which gives Renly some really good points, brownie points, at the beginning of this story.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been at King's Landing. He's been on the small council. He would have made a great king. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that some of the criticism of him is completely invalid, including the criticism of succession crisis and things. Basically, in a way, the criticism of Renly comes down to he wasn't willing to engage in traditional kinslaying that a younger brother would have to do. Therefore, he's the evil one, and his brother was willing to do kinslaying, so he's the good one. And there's something wrong with that logic. I feel like there's a flaw there.
Yeah, that one situation. I mean, when I first read the book and saw the show, and Jamie pushed the Bran out the window, I'm like, I'm done with that, man, done. And then we get to the point that after the peach, which is a very, very good scene in the book and in the show. They did pretty good in the show. But the fact that Stannis was willing to kill, I mean, Stannis had to know what was going on. Yeah. He had to know that she was birthing a shadow baby. And for him to be willing to kill his younger brother and really not be willing to kill, because he's even like, they're talking like, if you find my brother, do your best not to harm him, talking about not harming Stannis. I have a real problem with that with Stannis. I mean,
yeah, well, I got a lot of problems with Stannis. I understand the admiration for him. He does some things that are really admirable, but there's a lot of problems with Stannis.
Yes, and a lot of it is got to do with Melisandre.
Maybe I kind of think that's he's deliberately trying to get us to do what people do in his history, where they blame the foreign witch woman for the responsibility of the Lord who's consulting with the foreign witch woman, right? That happens over and over again in the history, and it's supposed to be clear. No, Stannis is the one calling the shots. He's the one that decides Sunglass needs to burn for holding to his faith, right? Yeah. Melisandre didn't like wait till Stannis went to the Blackwater and then go rogue and start burning his prisoners. Right. No, that's not what's going on here, right? Yeah. Stannis burns people for holding to their faith, the only values they've ever known, the only principles they've ever known. And that's not good.
No. Well, I mean, he's burning faithful people. They're faithful to their faith.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not willing to lie to save their life. They're not, okay, yeah, we're off topic, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we got to talking about Renly, and so we're saying, Renly's he's not the evil terrorist that some people paint him to be, especially if you understand the succession of the Iron Throne and how it's deliberately gone back and forth with things that have not in any way destabilized the rest of the realm. In particular, we know, we're told over and over again that a daughter comes before an uncle, right?
Right.
Over and over again, we're told that. And so people who say that the Council of 101 established the current rule and the people were motivated by their current power, that's completely false. It invalidates almost every house because at some point a daughter inherited before an uncle in their history. Right. So anybody who says, oh, they had to do that because that validates their own house, no, it invalidates their own house. It's exactly the opposite. Anyway.
Okay. I'm really good about getting us off topic.
No, that's all right. So anyway, I don't remember. Everything happened so fast, I didn't see. You rotten, Arya shrieked. She flew at her sister like an arrow, knocking Sansa down to the ground, pummeling her. Liar, 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 liar. Arya, stop it, Ned shouted. Jory pulled her off her sister, kicking. Sansa was pale and shaking as Ned lifted her back to her feet. So, as we already commented earlier, Sansa's first sentence contradicts the rest. Yeah. Ned is expecting honor from Sansa, but later on he's going to explain to Arya that he empathizes with her situation. Yeah. He expected truth and honor, but he's capable of understanding of why people can't always do that. Yeah. And he's not always done that himself, and he understands that there can be honor in a lie and so forth, right?
Yes, the little white lies that are told for the right reason.
Yeah. Ned could see Arya tense in Jory's arms. Jory spoke up quickly. We found no trace of the direwolf, Your Grace. So you speak up. Yeah, when you planned a lie like that, you definitely speak really quickly. You've been ready for this moment. You knew what you were going to say, and so you say it right away.
Yeah.
The Queen raised her voice. 100 golden dragons to the man who brings me its skin. And we're going to hear more about those. Ned's going to remember this line.
Yeah.
He doesn't mean lady, does he? She saw the truth on his face. That's one of those moments where you're being told the reaction of somebody, where George, as I've said before, he steps outside of this POE structure whenever it benefits the story. And people sometimes make a big deal out of one paragraph here or there, but he does it whenever it benefits the story. And so she saw the truth on his face, where this isn't like Ned seeing that she sees the truth on his face, right? He's just breaking the structure whenever it suits the story to tell it better. And so people get really focused on like one paragraph here or there, and I'm like, no, this happens a lot. I mean, I don't think this is even the first time we've mentioned it. So I think this isn't even the first time we've seen it. But
I don't think so. Yeah.
You'll hear people say this only happens once. It's like, no, I think we've already talked about 2 times, and we're like at the very beginning of the book still.
Yeah.
No,
that's one of those things that we, as we go, we'll notice it every time it happens.
Yeah, and people say, oh, this is the only time this happens. No, it happens all the time. In fact, at one point, Arya takes an axe to the back of the head in a POV structure where it's Arya's point of view. I mean, come on, like I said, he's going to break the rules whenever it suits him to tell the story better. And so,
yes,
anyway,
the story is more important than the rules,
right? He doesn't mean lady, does he? She saw the truth on his face. No, she said. No, not lady. Lady didn't bite anybody. She's good. Lady wasn't there, Arya shouted angrily. You leave her alone. Stop them, Sansa pleaded. Don't let them do it. Please, please. If only Ned had resigned his post here.
Yeah, that'd been an awesome time. Because when people show you who they really are, you need to take them for their word. And Robert showed him who he really is.
Yeah, he's so defeated.
Yeah.
Do it yourself then, Robert, he said in a voice cold and sharp as steel. At least have the courage to do it yourself. Robert looked at Ned with flat, dead eyes and left without a word, his footsteps heavy as lead. So Ned's voice is like ice again, right? And this time it's more explicitly cold and sharp as steel, but cold, sharp steel is meant to be ice. So his voice of ice was really the same thing here.
Well, as good as Robert knows Ned, he knows what that tone and that sharpness in his voice means.
Yep.
And he's sitting there and he's realizing, boy, I just got my nuts cut off here. He knows how bad he's looking to everybody in that room.
Yep.
Especially from his best friend ever. So, I mean, it's one of those instances that Robert shows you who exactly is.
Yeah, I feel like it's basically some sort of death symbolism, resignation. He's he's definitely completely resigned, and I feel like it's almost like death.
Yeah.
Ned sat beside her for a while. Lady, he said, tasting the name. He never paid much attention to the names the children had picked, but looking at her now, he knew that Sansa had chosen well. She was the smallest of the litter, the prettiest, the most gentle and trusting. She looked at him with bright golden eyes, and he ruffled her thick gray fur. Shortly, Jory brought him ice. When it was over, he said, choose 4 men and have them take the body north, bury her at Winterfell. All that way, Jory said, astonished. All that way, Ned affirmed. The Lannister woman shall never have this skin. So Ned definitely remembers the line, as we mentioned, and I think he definitely knows the direwolves too, right? He knows that she's the most gentle and trusting. He doesn't pay much attention to why they chose the names they chose.
Right.
But that doesn't mean he's not paying attention to the direwolves. I think he really was. And I like him thwarting Cersei here.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is like the second time she's called the Lannister woman or something like that, where he refuses to say her name.
Or the queen or whatever. Doesn't want to give her the title.
I think it's in the Cat's first chapter. I mean, like, that woman is your queen. I mean, he just doesn't call her queen or Cersei very, very often.
Yep. All right, so the end of the story here. You got a
little bit to go.
Yeah. No, it's pretty much the end of the story here. It was the butcher's boy, Micah, his body covered in dried blood. He'd been cut almost in half from shoulder to waist by some terrible blow struck from above. You rode him down, Ned said. The hound's eyes seemed to glitter through the steel of that hideous dog's head helm. He ran, he looked at Ned's face and laughed, but not very fast. The hound does enjoy killing, as he will tell us later in Clash Sansa 4. Does it give you joy to scare people? No, it gives me joy to kill people, his mouth twitched. Wrinkle up your face all you like, but spare me this false piety. You were a High Lord's get. Don't tell me Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell never killed a man. And I do think it's worth noting. I know this is later. This is the second book that I'm talking about, but it's worth noting the term "get" typically refers to a bastard, and associating the term "false piety" with that is an interesting term to associate with it.
I never thought that.
But the point is that the hound does enjoy killing.
Yes.
His eyes seem to glitter through the steel of that hideous dog's head helm. He laughed. Right.
Do you think with every person that he kills that it's slowly killing a little bit of himself, that he's just shut that far away, and actually Sansa and Arya are play a bigger part of his redemption arc, because he loves Sansa, I ain't gonna lie. I mean,
I mean, he sees the sisters as worthy of his protection and trying to be a good guy, and he's constantly struggling with wanting to be honorable, wanting knights to be what they should be, and just being the butcher and so forth. So I think the answer is that he's a very gray character, as are all humans.
Yes.
And people are capable of embracing evil and enjoying it, and people are capable of embracing good and enjoying striving to be better. And I think he learns to embrace striving to be honorable as much as he embraced being the killer that he was.
Right. I think being the killer might be a little bit more of that's his false front. That's his armor until Sansa happens. That's his armor to keep people away from him, to where they can't hurt him. Just like it was his brother that burned his face, so he's not gonna let anybody close to him. But when he sees Sansa, his little bird, his heart tends to start to melt a little bit, and some of that armor that he's put around himself to keep people at distance is slowly being melted away. And yes, I used the word melted like ice. And then Arya continues melting that heart down. So, okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, everybody at some point has probably laughed at somebody else's expense and taken some joy in that, and especially if it's somebody they didn't like. Yeah. And I think that I've never killed somebody and gotten joy from killing somebody, but I'm sure it's got to be something similar to that, right? I mean, you can look back now and realize that when you were a kid, you were a jerk for laughing at your friend when something, when people were picking on him or something, and and realize at the time, it was kind of giving you joy to pick on somebody, right? And so anyway, the point is, I assume that people who kill and get joy from it is probably similar to whatever your worst moment was as you laughed at somebody who you probably should have been on the side of or whatever when you were a kid or something, right? So the point is, people do sometimes enjoy being evil, and that doesn't mean that they're not capable of enjoying being good and realizing that that's better, and taking more pride in it.
I agree. I mean, I had a hard time writing any questions for this chapter because as soon as you start reading it and everything, you know what's going to happen, you know how you're going to feel. Yeah. So some of the questions I got, I read it last night, so I had to reread it this morning just to have a couple of questions on the chapter, and then the rest of it was just kind of playing off what you had, because I couldn't write a whole lot for this. I couldn't think of what to write because I'm reading the chapter. The chapters got a lot of weight to it. Oh yeah, and it was I ain't gonna lie, it's one of my least favorite. There's a couple that I definitely hate more than this one, but it's not a good chapter for me.
Yeah, it's rough, right? I mean,
that's why you ride the roller coaster for the ups and downs. I mean,
yep. And it's interesting how much you can care about his characters and his animals, even in this case, right?
Yeah. I mean, get back to the animals. I mean, he says he can't write a character until he gives them a name, and he did the same thing with the wolves. He gave them the correct name for him to be able to write how they would come across the page to us. So, I mean, it's beautiful writing, without a doubt.
Yep. Well, next up is Bran's Falling Dream.
There you go. We can play us some. What is the band? Tom Petty.
Free Falling, yes.
Yeah, there you go. I know you're going to have a blast on this next chapter.
Oh yeah.
You gonna be able to do it tomorrow or Wednesday?
I think so. Although I'm not sure if we wouldn't be better off staggering these, giving us a little more time to think and plan these things. So, what do you think?
Wednesday.
What do you think? Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday sounds good.
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday when we can do it, and then
I think that's better.
We can.
I want to do it justice, right? And I want to take some time to do it justice.
I'll stop from doing a video on the days in between just to so I can have time to do other stuff. My wife's yelling at me to get done.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, we'll see you on Wednesday then.
All right. I've been Old New Dude, and he's been
Richard York, Actor's Trueborn Son.
All right. Y'all take care. Have a good one.
Bye.
Me and this phone, I swear.